Today from the Garden of Eden. I spoke of it last week, but the Garden of Eden is here, right now, on this earth. After Adam had sinned onto the world, and because God was concerned that Adam would eat of the tree of the life, he set forth the cherub with the flaming sword to guard the way. And not just to prevent Adam, but any other person to eat of the tree of life. And God set the cherub to guard the way. And this was a sin just worthy of death. So please, repay your debts before you die. This Garden of Eden is here on this earth. So please listen carefully. This is in Revelations. Revelation chapter 2, verse 7. To those who remain, the tree of life remains for them. It's a great blessing. And then the work of God happens. And in John chapter 8, verse 44, it says, "The your father is Satan." And so 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, for 54 years, you're just fighting amongst yourselves. And so there are those who shed their tears with this word. Please do not be deceived. Please look at the word in Matthew chapter 25. The present is the fact that everyone is suffering right now in the present. And the suffering that I'm going through right now has begun 6,000 years ago. It doesn't matter that I'm here or the scholars decide or research about this. This is about you. And these are people that are researchers, scholars, and we discuss. This is something that happened in history. And we discuss that Abraham and Lamech lived 58 years, and this was a astonishing discovery. With Noah, who existed during the flood, He lived with Abraham 58 years. A lot of scholars discuss that, oh, it took 120 years to build the ark, but it's not. It, it took less than 100 years. So we must gaze upon the Bible very correctly. If I don't, then it's a curse upon me. Why should I receive a curse? So please do not lie. Do not lie. Those who lie can never enter into heaven. And I want all of you to live. What's the point of me living here on this world for however many tens of years? All of you cannot take a single cent when you go to heaven. There's no disappointment when it comes to faith. And even though I give this study to people, they don't believe it. So please repay your debts. Do not receive the curses. Don't receive the curses. The things of the lies. Then you will never ever be able to enter. Then you realize, oh, what the words of senior pastor have said is true. So according to the words of Moses, do not sin. Please repay. It doesn't matter how much money that you have. It's all useless. Please repay the spiritual money that you owe. Matthew chapter 5 verse 26. Truly I say to you, until I receive or repay my debt, I will not be able to go there. So that debt, please hold on to it. And until you pay it, that you cannot move. It's an unfathomable debt. And so as I wrote my book, it hurts so much that my head hurt. And it's not an easy thing to write 40 things, 40 phrases. And so when you see these texts, a lot of people look at it and hold on to me, and they feel certain things. If you look in Luke chapter 12, verse 59, it's the same thing. And Jesus was so pitiful. He has money, but he doesn't pay. So please pay. Please pay back. When you go to that kingdom, then all debt must be paid. As we live in this life, we deteriorate. Our shoulders become heavier, and we become more and more tired. And we are filled with these worries, but not just worries, but these desires. So please, all of these, pay back your debts. And when you go to heaven, what do you need? All of your materialistic things you give back. So please, as I speak to you as my own children, please listen to me. So for people that have believed for 2 or 3 years, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, it's it must be the same. Philippians chapter 2 verse 5, it says the same thing. Jesus is love. John chapter 13 verse 34, it says, those who love do not lie. I cannot say any more than this. Please do not lie. You know, to the person that lies well, it's like they conceal over and over again. And then, in the end, no matter how much heaven covers for them, it cannot cover their lie. And so we have so much sin. And even among the Ten Commandments, it says, do not lie. And even it says in the Bible that to lie is a huge sin. We cannot eat of the tree of life. And we're just living in this world. And when you think about that, do you have strength? It's just a life of living a lie. So please do not lie. When you look at Revelation chapter 21 verse 23, there's no use of the light of the sun, and the revelation of the sun has been the same. God is light. This sun is the light of the world, but there will come a time that it will be gone. Right now, the light that of the word that is 7 times brighter. It says this in Isaiah. Why do you have greed? You have to give your life to God. So within your families, within your mother, your father, and your children, please get receive this forgiveness. I was unable to overcome my sin, overcome the things that I must be forgiven of. And I stole from other people. And so, as it says in Revelation chapter 2, verse 7, to those who are victorious, then they will receive the things. So, please, before time is up, do these things. Revelation chapter 21, verse 24 to 25. We must seek the revelations of God. And there is no night in heaven, no evening. So, in the same way that your house is just, your door is open, there's no night. In Revelation chapter 21, verse 26, it's just no open door. Think about a rich president or a rich person that lives in the house. They have everything. And once they come into their house, all glory is lifted to him. And in the same way, we have also received that glory. If we have three children in the house, we give them a snack. And then when we ask them, can we have a little bit of that snack, they don't give it. And to the children, amongst the children, the one that does give us some of their snack, we give them more, right? And that's just what God does. And when you look at Revelation chapter 21, verse 27, everything that you give to those who lie, they cannot partake in the blessing. And Revelation chapter 22 is the same way. So, what I'm trying to say to you today, please, to the parents, to the children, please love your children. And I know you love your children. And I know you must be very concerned or worried about your children. During the times of Noah or during the times of Abraham, times are very tough. Even when Jesus was here in this world, it was difficult. No one received him. And even when the prophet Elijah was here in Matthew 17, verse 12, why should I bow my head to you? I have no reason to listen to you. And this kind of a sin. And so, in the same way that Prophet Elijah has said, these people just did not listen to Jesus when he was here on this world. Malachi said the same thing in Malachi chapter 4, verses 4 to 6. you guys do not know the heart of the Father. If you did know, then you would fear him. And in Malachi chapter 4, verses 4 to 6, Malachi said the same thing. And it was prophesied that Malachi would come before the prophet Elijah. But no one acknowledged him. And so these prophets were just like the Messiah. They battled with the Pharisees and Sadducees. And they said the Messiah will come here for sure. And they asked, who's the Elijah to come before the Messiah? They asked him, hey, teacher, are you the Messiah or the teacher to come? And who is Elijah? A lot of people ask this question. And Jesus answered, Elijah had already come. And Jesus pretty much said, you and I are people. What is the point that Elijah had come or not? The Son of Man is before you. And he said that the times of the Son of Man are like the times of Noah, people marrying their sons and daughters. And so, what I'm trying to say is the times of the word, when it comes to the time of the word, then it will happen. And so, I'm very frustrated because when you look at these people, uh, it was already recorded in the Old Testament. And thinking about Jesus, it was already recorded, but still. And so they should have understood, they should have eaten of the fruit of the tree of life, but they didn't. And so they, not only they themselves went to hell, but they sent their children to hell because they did not instruct them in the right way. So please, prepare your depths. We must eat of the fruit of the tree of life. Revelation chapter 21 and 22 and Genesis chapter 2. When you see this, we must eat of the tree of life. Today, we must be the ones that eat of the tree of life. That's our sermon title today, right? In the New and the Old Testament, the word creation, it is in reference to the new heaven, the new earth, and until those are fulfilled, Jesus Christ is the focus. And his words are the New Testament and Old Testament. Genesis chapter 1 is the beginning of all creation. It's the beginning of mankind, which is Genesis chapter 2. But During those times, the serpent was the strongest. And according to this serpent, mankind was tempted. And if they were truly filled, Adam and Eve, if they were truly filled with the things of God, then they would not have been tempted. But because they were tempted, the words of Satan were able to enter into their life, into their world. And so they didn't have wisdom because they were unable to guard the garden. And this is an amazing thing. Genesis chapters 1 through 3. This is regarding the salvation and the redemption of all of creation. It's the redemptive history. And it allows us to realize within all of these things God's Word. We must believe God's Word. This says is John chapter 6. If we believe in God's Word, we must eat it. The words of God are our bread. It's our life. From the beginning of creation, there was there was life, but after the temptation of Satan, it was all the fall. It was a 100% fall. If we were to talk about this in terms of debt, then it's just 100% debt. There's no way for mankind to live after this. It's a complete fall. Complete fall. It's amazing, isn't it? The temptations of Satan brought about the fall of mankind. And this is something that happened within the world. It's an actual historical thing. 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 3, uh, Romans chapter 5 verse 10 to 15. Please listen carefully. It doesn't matter how much the world develops, but mankind is the focus. Mankind has the authority. Mankind is so precious. Mankind is the focus of all creation. That's first. Secondly, it's the bulk of creation. And thirdly, mankind was made in the image of God. Where else is there the image of God except for mankind? Only in mankind has the image of God. In Genesis chapter 1 verse 26, verse 27, and chapter 5 verse 1, Genesis chapter 9 verse 6, 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 7, James chapter 3 verse 9, it says this. The image of God, God took dust, and that kind of dust God took and made into his own image. When God made beasts, he did not make in the same way. From dust he formed man. Genesis chapter 2 verse 7. And in Hebrew, apar min hadama. Apar min hadama. And it is a very fine dust that he made man from. This is also in Genesis chapter 2 verse 19. Min hadama. So we can see it's a very fine dust. It's not coarse dust. God made man from very fine dust. There's no deformalities of it. So God's focus is all in man. Apar min hadama. Very fine dust. So beast was just min hadama. When he built the beasts and the birds of the air, Genesis chapter 2 verse 19, min hadama. These were a very coarse, rough dirt. And so when he made man, he breathed into him the breath of life. And so he became a living being. This, this is a precious word. Through the nostrils of God, we became a living being. And so when God made man, it's not just a regular creation. It is contained God's deep will. And there's a purpose to it. It's not something to just be tossed around in the wind. God's special purpose, his special focus, is all contained within his creation. If you look in Psalms chapter 49 verse 12 and also verse 20, it says it. And it talks about the preciousness and how important mankind is. It's the value of mankind contained within these verses. It's incomparable. And also especially this mankind was placed into the Garden of Eden. This is in accordance to Genesis chapter 2 verse 8. And God planted in Hebrew this natah, and this is to plant or to make. In other words, God had planted this place to be that beautiful, to be that majestic. All of God's focus has been placed into this garden. His complete focus. There's creation. Yes, God has created everything. And he has created mankind in his own image. And God had focused his energies into making mankind. And God has had that much of an interest in us. focused onto us. It, it was a focus that did disregarded all of his own self. And so when you think about mankind, you must realize the worth that we have, the value that we have. And those who have no value or worth, they're just discarded into hell. So please, pastor, elder, elders, it doesn't matter. You must enter into the Garden of Eden. So God placed the man into the garden. This is Nuah in Hebrew. And this is the word for Sabbath or to rest. And this is an amazing reference. There's no trouble, there's no problems. God placed man into this perfect place. And amongst this pleasant place, God was with them. And he said, I will protect them. And with this kind of a focus God had to us.